Hello and welcome to the All About Ability podcast. This podcast is sponsored by Kyle Financial and Strathclyde House Buyers. Kyle Financial are proud supporters of local communities and specialise in helping you protect what matters most. For your family, your lifestyle and even your income, they have it covered. Kyle Financial are now offering free wills, regardless of whether or not you need any other service. Go check them out on the website www.kyle-financial.co.uk or check them out on Facebook, Twitter or even Instagram. Strathclyde House Buyers are a local property solutions company who specialise in helping people sell their property quickly with no fees. If you or anyone you know are looking for a fast, stress-free sale, check them out on the website www.strathclydehousebuyers.com, on Facebook or on Instagram. Cool, we're rolling. Well, Scott, like I've made jokes about how guests intimidate me sometimes when I've had fighters and that one, right? But honestly, mate, I'm sitting here like that, shaking. Don't piss this guy off.
Start flipping tables and stuff.
Just take your hand and crush my face like that thing at Game of Thrones or something. It's honestly, it's such. See, actually, like, how long does it take to get used to that sort of? When everyone sees you, it must be like a shock to the system, just being that big.
Well, it's weird because obviously, growing up, do you know what I mean? I've always been big, do you know what I mean? It's like in primary school and things like that, I was always the tallest in my class and all the rest of it. So to hear folk saying that, it's weird, do you know what I mean? Because I'm like, what are you talking about? This is just the norm, do you know what I mean? To me, and folk are like, oh, what size are you? And all right, big man, all that. I'm like, what are you talking about? Do you know what I mean? I'm just Scott, do you know what I mean? Yeah. So it's weird, but then you need to take a wee step back and look and go, right, well, it's not till you see photos where you maybe standing next to people and you think, right, well, maybe I'm a wee bit bigger. Do you know what I mean?
See, what's interesting about that is I feel like that's the same way I feel about being in a wheelchair, even though it's a totally different thing. Like people are always like, oh, what, like they see it as a big deal, and then you're just like, no, I'm just
the norm.
It's just my normal.
Exactly.
So it's like that's the way you put it. I'm like that exactly. I can totally relate to that. Except I wish it was had your problem rather than my problem to be fair. But you know, it's not bad. No, but no, like I'm really interested in like intense training. I love going to the gym and just smashing it and like doing difficult things is something I really enjoy because it makes me. I think it just makes you more chilled out.
Yep.
And like, but when I look at your kind of training with your kind of sport, it seems such another level. I'm really curious as to what the actual routine is like for you.
Well, I've been seeing your videos, your ski rigs and stuff like that. That looks intense for me. Do you know what I mean? That's too much like cardio. But, no, well, as I say, it's pretty. Now that I'm taking things a lot more seriously, you know, I've done this. I've been doing this for about 5-6 years now. The Strongman. Yeah. And at first it was just a kind of. It is still just a hobby, but do you know what I mean? I was just kind of, you know, doing whatever at the weekends, you know, having a drink and just kind of not really bothering. But now, obviously, I'm focusing more and putting more into it. Do you know what I mean? That's the training's obviously ramping up a bit now. I only train like 4 times a week, 2-hour sessions usually. 3 of them will be kind of more gym-based exercises where I'll do like your squats. Next day will be deadlifts, and then the other day will be some form of pressing. Do you know what I mean? Whether it be shoulders or whatever. And then the 4th day will be like strongman specific, so easy for me to say, strongman specific events, you know, whether it be your yoke, farmers walks, atlas stones, all these kind of things, you know. So it's pretty, a lot of the stuff I do is, you can do it in any gym, do you know what I mean? But
just with 10 times the weight.
Well, it's leveling as well, you know, you think, we're lifting heavy all the time, but it's not like that. Do you know what I mean? We pyramid up, do you know what I mean? And we peak for competitions and stuff. So the start of my training block basically is not really different to anybody else. It's kind of moderate weights, and then as the weeks pick up, obviously the weights step up a wee bit because, as you can appreciate, you can't lift heavy every week. Do you know what I mean? You would be knackered. So,
well, I mean, there's lifting heavy than there's doing strongman. You know, there's different levels to this, I guess.
I know. I could have picked an easier hobby. Do you know what I mean? My knees don't thank me for the the constant pounding that they get. Do you know what I mean? With the strongman.
Well, injuries must be a big part of it though.
It is. Well, touch hairy wood. I've never had anything serious. I've had a bit of a groin strain and stuff, but things like bicep tears and stuff like that are rife in strongman, you know, and it's quite a bad one to get, you know, if you rupture bicep. A lot of the stuff we do in strongman is very bicep heavy, do you know what I mean? So there is many injuries, you know. I've seen some crazy freak injuries at all different competitions and things like that. But luckily I've managed to avoid it for now, so long may that continue.
Hope I've not jinxed you, man.
You know, I'll know who to blame.
Exactly. But what was it that got you into it anyway?
Well, I'm sure like everybody else, you know, you just watched World's Strongest Man every year at Christmas time, you know. It's the kind of highlight of the Christmas time, you know, watching that in the telly. So I've always been interested in it. And I used to I done Muay Thai boxing years ago. I was about 18, I was kind of 20. At the same time, I started kind of lifting weights and getting in the gym. And I got to a stage where I couldn't last around in the ring anymore because I was getting more muscular, putting on more size with the gym. So I had to kind of make a decision. Do I keep lifting weights or do I focus on the Thai boxing and, you know, kind of cardio side of things? So obviously the vanity and the gym bro in me won, do you know what I mean? And I decided to stick at the weights. And then I was just doing that for a few years. And then my fiancée Maisie got me tickets one day to go and watch Scotland's Strongest Man. It was one of our kind of first dates. We went along and there was a kind of half-time crowd challenge thing. It was like a wee 60 kilo log for reps. So I went and done that for a laugh. I won it. And then I was like, do you know what? I'm going to give this a go. And then I just found somewhere to train it. And the following year, I entered Scotland's Strongest Man and qualified for the final, my first time. So I've never looked back since. You know, that was kind of 6 years ago now. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's been a crazy 6 years. You know what I mean? When I think about it and I say 6 years, it feels as if I've been doing it forever, but it's went over pretty quickly. You know what I mean? It's been a quick 6 years. So that's kind of how I started.
It's amazing how things can just come together like that, you know, with the right time and stuff.
Well, that's it. As you say, it was just a mixture of different things, you know. Like I would never have bothered trying it, do you know what I mean? And then obviously I went and watched that show, and then I found a local guy, Martin Lennox, actually owns Hostile Strength in Motherwell. That's where I train now. He had some stuff out in his back garden. It was like Atlas stones, some hanging. It was just like basic stuff, you know, and that's try to find them. They were kind of any strongman kit back 2014. It was hard to come by, you know. Nobody had. It was really a kind of niche sport, you know. So so I managed to find somebody with some kit to train on, and then that's just kind of took it for there. Kind of fell in love with it, and the rest is history, as I say.
Nice, man. So it's really grown in the past 6 years you've been doing it?
It's massive. It's really starting to come into the mainstream now.
Yeah.
And then you've obviously got guys like our very own Tom Stoltman winning the World's Strongest Man, you
Amazing,
know,
man.
flying the flag for Scotland. So it's only going to grow. You know what I mean? It's been getting bigger and bigger gradually. But these last 2-3 years, it's kind of come more. I think YouTube's been a lot to do with it, with the strongmen and stuff doing their YouTube channels. People watching that, it's kind of made it a lot more accessible to everybody. And, you know, I think everybody somewhere's got a wee interest in it, do you know what I mean, deep down.
Well, there's something fascinating about it. Like, it's everybody likes going to the gym and knows it's good to be healthy and that, but there's a thing that's fascinating about the idea that somebody can go to the extreme level of really just going all in and going for it. And you can see, is that what's made you, so like watching the growth of it, you were talking about how you went from kind of doing it as a hobby to now really going, I'm going to go further on this. Is seeing the growth of it and seeing somebody like Tom, the thing that kind of makes you go, I'm going to see if I can really make this everything it can be?
I would think the thing that done it for me basically was, maybe about 3 years into it by this point, and I just kind of plateaued, you know what I mean? I felt like I was training all the time, and I wasn't really getting where I wanted to be in competitions and stuff like that, you know. I wasn't getting the results and stuff. And I thought, obviously, with doing the training and stuff and doing events days at the weekend and stuff, I was missing a lot of time with my family at the weekends and stuff. And I'm like, well, if I'm going to sacrifice this much family time and stuff like that, I was like, I better give it a right good go, do you know what I mean, and actually have something to show for it, do you know what I mean, instead of just missing weekends here and there everywhere and looking back in a couple of years' time and going, I've missed all that. But at least, you know, I was like, no, this is it. So I got a nutritionist, I got a coach, so that I knew I was eating the right stuff. Every training session was counting, do you know what I mean? I was focusing on the big goal, you know. So that was a couple of years ago. And as I say, my progression has just been going up and up ever since then, you know. It's the hard work starting to pay off now, you know.
So you've kind of zoned in on the prep of it all. Like,
yeah.
I think that's a big part of it, is people just think you go into the gym and you lift weights and that's it, but you need a nutritionist, the coach to make the sessions count, and that's...
Aye. Well, that's it. You can spend as long as you want. You can spend all day in the gym, and then you go away and have a kebab and a bottle of wine and a couple of beers, you know what I mean? And then you're not going to get anywhere. You're just going to start from square one on Monday again, do you know what I mean? And that was the kind of the trap I had fell into. You know what I mean? I was training, doing well Monday to Friday, then at the weekend I'd get pissed and, do you know what I mean, eat kebabs. And don't get me wrong, I still enjoy a kebab and a beer every now and then, but it's things in moderation, do you know what I mean? And it's being consistent, do you know what I mean? Eating consistently, training consistently, getting consistent rest and recovery and things like that. So really focusing on that kind of things has really helped, you know.
It just shows you that it kind of needs to be a whole lifestyle thing, like an everyday type thing, not because actually when you think about how, because you're talking about like the things you eat and stuff like that, I think people have this idea that because you're so big and you need to be so big, that you can just eat whatever you want and burn it off.
Well, that's the kind of the bad habit I fell into in the start. I was like, oh, it doesn't matter as long as I'm getting 5,000 calories. Doesn't matter if I'm eating McDonald's takeaways, you know what I mean? It's like I just need to eat, but it doesn't work like that, unfortunately, and I learned that the hard way. You know what I mean? It has to be the good quality proteins, the good quality carbs, you know, the right kind of carbs, fats and stuff like that. So it just took a while
to find the right balance.
Right, and to realise that, do you know what I mean? To get that mindset, you know? Because
we're talking about prep and stuff, but you actually did a competition recently, like kind of off the cuff. You didn't have much time to prepare for it and finished really well. What is that kind of like when you've a last minute opportunity come up and you maybe haven't fully prepped for it, but you've just went for it?
Well, what had happened with that, obviously it was the UK's strongest man there. I'd done the qualifier for it a couple of months previous, and I'd put a lot of pressure on myself to qualify, and it was the top 3 guys that qualified, and I missed out by 1 point, you know what I mean? I finished 4th by 1 point in the qualifier, and it was a hard one to take, but it just shows you again how strong the Scottish field is, the athletes in Scotland, you know, just keeping better and better every year. So I'd missed out by a point, you know, and I was obviously gutted and whatever, and I hadn't performed as well as I had hoped, and I think that was all down to putting a lot of pressure on myself and a lot of expectation. But then a couple of weeks before UK's, they decided to give a wildcard spot this year, and basically judged it on all the qualifiers, who was the closest runner-up, and luckily, because I'd only missed out by a point and it was so close, you know, I get the vote to be the wild card. So as you said, no long to prepare for it. So
you must have been buzzing though to be like, I'm actually back in, you know.
I was buzzing, absolutely, and I think that actually helped me. You know, the last a wee bit, I was ready anyway. If you know what I mean, I'll still keep myself in the gym, keep myself ticking over. But I think not having that time to put a lot of pressure on myself and get in as the undercard, the wild card, I should say, helped me, because it was the kind of underdog mentality. Nobody was really expecting much. Do you know what I mean? So I was like, I'll go in here and I'm just going to enjoy it. I'm going to give it my all and just see what happens. And that's what I done. I went and enjoyed myself, And for the first time in a competition for years, you know what I mean, I loved every minute of it, and it was the best I'd performed. Do you know what I mean? So I think it's just trying to not put too much pressure on yourself.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
psychological thing.
Aye, I think that was a massive difference. And it's just gave me a lot of confidence now to kick on, and you know, it's proved to myself that I can compete with the best, you know, because I finished 5th overall out of 16, but I was a point and a half away from second place. That's how tight it was.
It seems like the field in Scotland right now is really, I mean, I've never seen anything like it. We seem to be one of the dominant countries in it there.
Aye, well, it's starting to go that way. Obviously, for the first time ever in the UK's final, 3 out of the 8 finalists were Scotsmen. Do you know what I mean? That's never happened before. We were the predominant nation. You know, there was 3 Scotsmen, there was 2 English, 2 Irish, and a Welshman in the final. That's not the start of a joke, but aye. So you know what I mean. That was how the final lined up. So for to be a kind of relatively small nation and to have the most representation in the final, it just shows.
I mean, who needs football, man? We've got Strongman.
That's that, exactly.
I mean, because why do you think that actually is, though? What is it that we're doing differently than we've done before that makes us so good at this?
I don't know. It's probably, it just helps the fact that, you know, the athletes are getting more opportunities now. Do you know what I mean? There's more facilities to train at, whereas years ago it was a total underground sport. Do you know what I mean? It was maybe somebody knew somebody that, do you know what I mean, 10 mile down the road that had maybe an Atlas stone or something. Do you know what I mean? Now you can go to pretty much most gyms and there's some form of strongman kit in the gyms, so it's become more accessible to train the events, you know, which is, it's helped.
Just got the word out more, like there's more things about it.
It's get more popular, and obviously more people are trying it. Do you know what I mean? And realising, here, I'm pretty good at this. Do you know?
And now that Tom's went out and won the whole thing, it's like that must have been a buzz for you to see.
Oh, it was great. Obviously, Luke and Tom are good friends of mine as well, and just to see, you know, him flying the flag for Scotland, you know, it couldn't have happened to a better guy. You know, it was. Obviously, he's got massive support for Luke as well, and just it was brilliant to see, because like Tom and Luke have always been the kind of, they've been the pinnacle in Scotland. You know what I mean? They've always been the guys we've looked up to and been like, right, we need to get to that level, you know, and for them to go out and on the world stage and fly the flag for Scotland and do us all proud, it was brilliant to see, you know.
What is it that, like, see, because you all obviously work really hard and have really good work ethic with it all, and you're thinking, well, what is it that separates first foot? Because I find it fascinating when you look at sports where, you know, everyone could do it, really, but like you get certain guys that are able to break away and be the top guy, like Michael Phelps in swimming, for example. Like everyone can swim, but he's able to win all these gold medals. What do you think separates the guys at the top from the other guys?
Well, I don't think there's one key thing. Do you know what I mean? I think it's a lot of factors, like we spoke about, getting all the basics right. You know what I mean? Your food, you know what I mean? Your sleep, your training right, just getting all the day-to-day things right. And then ultimately, I think it just comes down to having all that, plus having the heart and the desire, you know, having the want. Like some folk have got all the ability in the world, but if they don't want it, do you know what I mean? If they've not got that fire inside them, the drive, they'll just never bother to do it. Do you know what I mean? So I think it's a perfect storm of all the things, I think. Do you know what I mean? Like having everything consistently, having everything in the place, and just having the kind of the fire, you know what I mean? The heart to go and do it. So
because you're seeing, like, I feel like you're seeing now that, you know, a lot of strongmen are actually becoming celebrities almost. Like Eddie Hall is like, he's been doing it for so long, and now you're seeing him, like, he's having a boxing match with the Thor guy.
Thor, like, I know.
What do you make of that?
Do you know what? It's, from a business point of view, it's a great thing. Do you know what I mean? Like, the amount of money they're going to make, they'll be set up for life. You know what I mean? And Eddie, and that's always been a really smart businessman. Do you know what I mean? I read his book and things like that, and he's really savvy with how to make money and stuff like that, you know. So he's playing the game, do you know what I mean? And fair play to him. personally, from a point of view, I think it's not really needed. Do you know what I mean? It's a bit of a circus, but then that's the whole part of it. Do you know what I mean? Folk will tune in, they'll pay whatever and watch it. You know, so fair play to them. You know, there's not a massive amount of money in the sport. And these guys have went on and made great careers through it, so good luck to them. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, because when you see when I heard that was happening, I'm thinking that'll be, like you say, it's just a circus. But you're seeing that everywhere now. It's all about the viewership and
Eating Mayweather and all that, doing these fights and stuff. It's just business.
Would you ever do something like that? Like,
I'd get punched in the face off MD for the kind of money they're on for like $1 million, do you know what I mean? I'd fight them all at the one time for some of that money, do you know what I mean?
I know.
But, I don't know, I'll wait and see. If I wasn't so stiff and unmobile, I would throw my hat in the ring for a bit of wrestling as well, like everybody else seems to be doing. But I can't even do a forward roll, so I don't think I've got any chance.
Well, see, I mean, have you ever seen Goldberg wrestle? You don't need to do much.
Well, this is true, exactly. Just powerhouse.
That's what they just want, a guy that looks like you. Would be perfect for that.
Well, that's it. I can stand there and just powerbomb folk through tables and stuff. Exactly. Do you know what I mean?
That's the old school sort of wrestling thing where it's like you just have a big guy that stands there and the other guy goes and gets the ropes and all that and bumps off on them and stuff.
I mean, they did a hard work.
Exactly. I mean, Andre the Giant could barely move. He was like, I think I could probably be better than him, and he was just standing there most of the time.
Well, this is true. You use what you've got to your advantage, I suppose. Exactly. I mean, he was about 7 foot, wasn't he? So. Well,
it's funny to bring up wrestling because I always end up talking about that somehow in this podcast.
It's funny. Obviously, I've listened to a few of your podcasts as well, and it was just good nostalgia. You know what I mean? Talking about all the back in the days. You know what I mean? I was like, I remember that. It was all my kind of era as well. You know, it was good to listen.
Davey Blaze had some stories about that.
Oh, Davey's mental. He's a good guy.
How do you know Davey?
I'd done a wee bit of work with Davey years and years ago. And we just kind of kept in touch through social media and things like that ever since, you know.
He's a good guy because he actually kind of set this up. He was like messaging me saying Scott would come on, and I was like, brilliant. So I messaged him. But
I want you to thank him. Cheers,
no, you two would make a good tag team, man. Get that on the go. I can be, you know, that guy that's next to Brock Lesnar. He just talks all the time. You can just stand there like that and get paid the money for it. And
you can be like that guy who used to come out with Undertaker and Hod Down. What's his name again?
Paul Bearer, mate. That's his name.
That's the one.
Mate, there's nothing I remember quicker than wrestling trivia. Do you know what I mean?
I fell away from it obviously when I got a bit older, but back in the days it was the Shawn Michaels and all that kind of stuff, Triple H, Stone Cold, The Rock, you know. It's
just it's funny because you may actually see a lot of strongmen kind of go into that sort of area because of the fact that it is a look. Even all these years later, they've got a lot more like fast guys, smaller guys and stuff, but it's still the look. I mean, look at that. Have you seen that guy Braun Strowman?
Aye.
He's like just a pure
he's a monster.
I'm pretty sure he came from Strongman stuff.
I'm sure he did, some sort of weightlifting, but I think it was Strongman. You're right. But as you say, it's the look that, you know what I mean? That's what you want to see. You don't want to see wrestlers that, you know what I mean, just look like wee Steve down the road, you know what I mean? It's in the pub, but you want big.
Yeah, that was always
guys,
I mean, the thing is as well, is like, we still live in a world where the heavyweights will always draw the most.
Aye, unfortunately. Well, I don't mean unfortunately, but it's just the reality. It's the truth. Do you know what I mean? Everybody wants to see the big guys in any sport. You know, I don't watch. I like boxing, but I'll always watch a heavyweight boxing. Do you know what I mean? Same way. I'm massive fan of MMA, but I watch a lot of the heavyweight fights. Yeah, do you know what I mean?
Look at that guy, Ngannou. He looks absolutely terrifying, man.
Exactly, I know. So it does, the heavyweights definitely do draw in the bigger crowds, you know, and I think it goes back to what you were saying about it's the big freak show element, you know what I mean? If you want to see the biggest guys, you know what I mean?
But there seems to be like a lot more respect on it now as well. Like, see, I think back in the day it used to be like, oh, these guys are just big because they're taking stuff and all this. But now people are able to see through YouTube and these platforms the graft and the dedicated lifestyle to it and the way to do it healthy as well.
Well, that's been the age old thing for, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Andy that's, you know, for the internet trolls and whatever, oh, he's just full of whatever, do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But they're the type of folk that are not willing to put in the work, they're not willing to put in the graft, do you know what I mean, to get there. So that's just their kind of way of justifying their own kind of laziness, do you know what I mean?
Well, exactly. Like, I think there's definitely a lot of people that will be, there's this sort of resentment of, look at how hard these guys work and look how much work they put into it. I would never be able to do that kind of graft.
Well, that's it, It will always be, oh, it's just because he's taking whatever. It's no, or that's because he's putting X amount of hours every day into the gym and eating this, and do you know what I mean? It's, the bits would never be praised, do you know what I mean? They would always just try and look for a negative and, you know what I mean? Try and say it's all because of that. Do you know what I mean? It's definitely not. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, there's a lot to it. Like, there's a lot of guys I know that could, well, not guys I know, but people that just take steroids and they're still, they don't look anything like you anyway. Do you know what I mean?
Well, that's it. It's not going to do the work for you. Do you know what I mean? You still need to do the work alongside it. So, it's just it's an excuse that people tend to throw out there. Man. Do you know what I mean? But
everybody's full of excuses, isn't it?
Well, that's it. They're good at making excuses. You know, it's like every walk of life. You know what I mean? You'll always have the guys that make the excuses, and you'll have the guys that actually go after it and get it done. Do you know what I mean?
Well, that's it. I mean, I've always thought that like doing difficult things and hard things is what makes you separate yourself from most people.
Well, that's it, because you know what I mean. Sometimes you need to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, as cliche as that sounds. You know what I mean? It's like some folk don't want when they go and get stuff and whatever else. Folk don't want to do it. Do you know what I mean? They don't want to get into the trenches. Do you know what I mean? It definitely separates.
Well, you're totally right. You're totally right, because I think actually stepping out the comfort zone it allows you to be less stressed and enjoy life more as well.
Aye, definitely.
Because is that something that, see, like with what you do, right? I've always pointed out the fact that when I did like the ski thing you were talking about when I was doing the 1000k challenge, which I'm still recovering from, I noticed a distinct level of not being stressed about anything. I'd come out it, and it was like, because it was so hard, your mind was so clear. Until you.
Well, that's the massive thing. You know, that's the thing that got me and probably a lot of people hooked on working out and got to the gym, lifting weights. It's just that obviously the endorphins and that after it, you feel great. Do you know what I mean? You go in and you feel terrible, and 9 times out of 10 you'd have probably just turned around the car park and went home. Do you know what I mean? But if you force yourself in, you'll come out feeling, do you know what I mean, $1 million. You'll feel great. Exactly, mate. And that's what it's all about. Do you know what I mean? That's how I think a lot of people have struggled during the lockdowns and things with the gyms being shut, because it's a massive part for mental health and things like that, you know, to get into that gym and have that release, you know what I mean? Because for some people that is their coping mechanism, you know. So to have that taken away, it was really tough for a lot of people, you know, myself included.
Was it difficult for you to adapt your training to that then? Yeah,
it was kind of old school. I had to get some logs and stuff like that and bits of kit, and I was training back out in the garden. I broke all sorts of slabs and stuff in the garden, dropping weights and stuff on them. So it was I kind of stepped back to the kind of grassroots level, you know, and back to how it started again. But it was all right in the first lockdown when it was beautiful sun and you know what I mean. But in the second one, when we were in the winter, it wasn't as nice. No.
That seems like a scene out of a movie. You just out in the dark, like rain, lifting logs.
Folk walking past, walking their dogs, like, who's this lunatic man? What's this guy doing?
This guy's off his nut, mate. He must be. No.
So that's what it was like back in the day when we used to have the yokes and stuff. You used to have to do them out in the street. Do you know what I mean? So it'd be like, right, make sure there's no cars coming, right, up the street and with these yokes in your back and farmers walks and stuff. Do you know what I mean? So the neighbours used to look out the windows and think, who are these lunatics, you know what I mean? Because it was, no matter the weather, rain and all that, they're still doing it, do you know what I mean? So,
well, that's the thing. Is, there was a quote I seen somebody, like, I think it was Dave Chappelle, he said, like, no matter what happens, the sun always rises every morning or something like that. And it's like, the days just keep going. And even for me, like, personally, I've not really been doing particularly well the past couple of weeks, but you start thinking about, like, how it's funny that you can just, if you just keep doing the stuff regardless of how, it's almost like doing it regardless of how you feel, and you just keep, because time doesn't stop for anyone, you know.
This is it. It's just trying to, I know it's tough sometimes, you know, but it's just reminding yourself, you know, there's, you know, better days will always come. Do you know what I mean? As tough as it feels at the time, you know, you need to just push on, you know, and you will get there. Do you know what I mean?
I think I brought this size of bottle just to make myself feel better.
I know. Well, I know that's...
It's like, because I thought, I need to bring something big to the equation.
So brought something small, so it made your hands look even bigger.
I know, I'm like, honestly, mate, I've done what, 45 of these now, this will be 45, and I've never had a bottle this size, and this is the time where you come in and have a bottle this size. And like,
how could that not have been episode 55?
Oh,
I'm just joking.
I thought you were like a guy as well.
I'm joking.
Like a guy as well.
I knew I had to get a dig in somewhere.
Fair enough. See, to be fair, I feel like I talk about Celtic too much on this.
No, obviously we're listening to other podcasts and stuff, you know, I'd heard, and it's brilliant, you know what I mean, that you're the season ticket.
Yeah, well,
stuff,
I'm kind of trying to push it to make more disability sports and get like a wheelchair football team and stuff in it, and hopefully my dream is to play an Old Firm game and tear into them, tear into you lot.
That's it.
That's it. But hopefully it's 55 for a while and not 56.
I know. We'll see how Ange does that.
I'm hoping Aberdeen does a favour, to be honest, at this point. So we'll see. We'll see.
Touching on that, but it's great how you're trying to get, you know, like wheelchair sports and stuff like that about, because one thing that I give Strongman credit for, it is massively inclusive for everything. Do you know what I mean? Like any level, like beginners, newcomers, you know what I mean, all the way up. There's weight categories for the under 80s, 90s, under 105s, you know what I mean? There's all the women's categories as well, and there's also like disabled categories and stuff as well. So it's so inclusive, do you know what I mean? Like no matter who you are, you can get a go, do you know what I mean? And there will be events that you can do you know what I mean?
Well, that's exactly the kind of stuff I like to hear, because I think there's not enough sports that are like that.
Aye, and that's what it's funny, that's the first time I've actually thought of that, because it is weird how the kind of niche, like unheard, like I don't mean unheard of, but less heard of sport has such a variety and it's so inclusive for everybody, whereas the mainstream stuff seem not to have the same kind of, you think it should be the opposite way about, do you know what I mean?
I mean, that's it. Because we talked about like the actual strongman stuff getting out there more with YouTube and things like that, and that was one of my big things, was realising that there wasn't really any sort of platform or any sort of thing where we're getting the word out about this, you know, and I think that comes through just, there's so many different disabilities, but it's hard to, because we're all so, it's like different varieties, it's hard to get us all to come together to sort of fight the same battle.
For categories and stuff like that, it's very true.
So like this is what, you know, hopefully we're getting the word out and we'll get a few more sports on the go, but maybe I should give the strongman stuff a go.
Definitely, definitely get some events on the go and give them a go.
Well, imagine, I don't know if I could play football with that. Like, although, do you know,
I'm too muscly, I can't.
But see, to be fair, I'd probably take that.
You want big biceps there, being able to play football, you know what I mean?
Well, see, it's funny because like what you were saying earlier about, you know, you felt like you were kind of plateauing and stuff with it. I've kind of had that the past week or so. I've been feeling a bit frustrated with stuff just because I done like 1,000 kilometers, which was a marathon a day for 30 days, and I lost a lot of weight. But it was like this realization that I'm not, you know, you're not really working towards a specific. I've always been in like go in, train hard, and eating like okay. I've never ate like terribly, but I think a part of it is actually being in the chair of where a lot of people, you know, will burn calories and things just by walking about. So when I'm not in the gym, I'm not moving, which means I'm not doing anything really. So you need to kind of almost do double, you know what I mean, to get the same output. And so it's like maybe that's, so when you were saying that, I was like, this is exactly how I'm feeling just now. So maybe I should get involved in something like that.
It's one of the ones as well, but I know you need to think like what you're putting in as well. So if you're not expending, if you're not maybe at that gym that day, you're not expending a lot of energy, you don't need a lot. So it's just trying to suit your diet and think about, you know what I mean, what your body needs for that day. Obviously when you're training, you'll need a wee bit more food to fuel. On your rest days, you know what I mean, you have a wee bit less, and it's just having that understanding of you know what I mean, you don't need to eat the same amount of stuff as what you're when you're not training. It's almost trying to like use your body as like a car, do you know what I mean? You're fueling it, do you know what I mean? You're putting certain nutrients and stuff in to fuel it for a certain job, do you know what I mean? It's just trying to get into that mindset as well, because I'm not like a binger, but if I have a competition in like 8 weeks, that's fine, I can train for the 8 weeks, and then I need to relax it a wee bit for like, I'll still eat consistently, but I'll have maybe a wee few more takeaways and stuff like that, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like after the competition for a couple of weeks, it'll relax a bit. I couldn't go full 100%, do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
12 months of the year, do you know what I mean? That would
Nobody
drive me
can.
nuts.
I mean, people will say they can, but I think you need to reset sometimes and things.
You need to just have a wee kind of step back, do you know what I mean, and enjoy some of the things. You should never feel as if I can't have that, because you can have that, you just move other things about to accommodate that, if that makes sense.
Well, I think it comes back to like a lot of people, maybe including myself with this, it can be harsh on themselves in the sense of like, if you're not doing it all the time properly, then you feel guilty about it, you know. And it's because even just doing the challenge, I think the thing I struggled with it was I was burning so many calories every day, so it got to the point where I was just being able to go home and just kind of, if you're burning like 3,000 calories or something a day, you can just, I wasn't as worried about it. I'd just be able to eat some stuff and feel fine. But I think when I came out of it, and it was like you weren't doing that every day, and you're
still trying to eat the same.
Yeah, and you're like, maybe I should stop having like pasta, like, you know, giant bowls of pasta every day.
Exactly. Somebody doesn't need that. Exactly. That's what it is.
But it's like, I wasn't entirely used to that sort of way of thinking, because it was just new to me. But as you were talking about it just made me think about how basically what I'm saying is you made me kind of wake up with it a wee bit, hopefully.
Well, that's it. You can still, as you say, you're having your big bowls of pasta to fuel yourself because you're having the workouts, right?
Yeah.
But doesn't mean the next day you can't have your pasta. Just have a bit less, have half the portion, do you know what I mean? So you're still enjoying it, but you don't need as many carbs and stuff like that. You don't need as much fuel because you're not training, do you know what I mean? It's took a lot for me to get to this stage of way of thinking towards food and things like that as well. So
I need to get you need to hook me up with this, mate.
Get it sorted.
Because that's the thing, mate. I know that like I do have a good sort of work ethic with things. Like I know that I'll work hard with it, but I just I don't think I'm very similar to what you said. Just I'm very meat-headed that way. Like, I think if I just work really hard, it'll be enough for me.
It's just getting the right kind of guidance.
Exactly. But you were talking about how the sport is very inclusive and things like that, right? Have you so see in terms of like seeing people in wheelchairs doing it? Is that something you've seen much of? Is that like a regular thing?
There's stuff on like you can check online and things like that as well. It's more, I've seen it a lot. See at the Arnold Classic in America. Yeah, there's actually a big division that's for like the disabled strongman, things like that. You get different categories. Like I'd be lying if I says it was like M1, M2, M3, and it'll be for different disabilities. You know what I mean? Maybe somebody's got one leg or somebody's got one arm or something like that, or else you'll have something separate for the wheelchair stuff. So it's massive over there, and especially like in the States and America and things like that, it is really, really big.
Well, I think with how well we're doing, that might be something it's good to highlight here, because you might start seeing more people in wheelchairs and more people with different disabilities come into.
Because off the top of my head, I can't really think anything in Scotland, but I have seen a few things down south. You know, there's been a few things in England, and one of the guys, his name escapes me. You need to forgive me for that, but he pulled like whatever the world record deadlift for that, and it was just like doing like he was sitting on the bench, if you know what I mean, and then he went down and lifted it up that way.
All right.
Do you know what I mean? So things like that you would be able to do. Do you know what I mean? You would be able to deadlift. Do you know what I mean? Believe it or not.
Mate, I'm buzzing off this, man. This is the start of my...
You know what I mean? Sit you on the bench and you'll be able to lift it underneath the bench and stuff. So it's all about thinking about ways around things. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because it's not a case of you can't do it. You can do it. You just need to find another way to do it. Do you know what I mean?
That's it, mate. It's all about ability.
Exactly, mate.
But it's really interesting because you're talking about how it's about adapting things and figuring out what works and what doesn't. But a lot of sports don't do that, which is, so...
You just get a set way and that's it. Do you know what I mean?
And that's why it's it's good to see something be so inclusive, like you say.
And that's the thing with Strongman as well. Like, sort of just
Carry
came to my head as well there with the way they do the Atlas stones as well. They'll have like an oil drum there and an oil drum there, and you'll basically lift the Atlas stone from there to your lap and then up onto the next one, and then you'll move on to the next. Do you know what I mean? The weights will go up. So that's a great way to do it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
For things like that. But sorry, I forgot what you said.
No. It's like that. It's just it's not something I necessarily realised was so up to date with that.
Aye.
And you start going, if something that intense is so up to date, why are we so far behind in the other things?
That's something that niche, and there's not a lot of money in the sport. Do you know what I mean? Everything's kind of funded by yourself and things like that. Aye, for something that kind of it's not mainstream, shall we say? Aye, you know what I mean? There's absolutely no way.
Well, I mean, it will be mainstream now that Tom's won that, I'm sure.
Aye, well, hopefully it'll be massive now. Do you know what I mean? I think it'll only do good things in Scotland, especially as well for youngsters wanting to get involved in weightlifting and all the rest of it, because you hear a lot of people saying, "Oh, it's unsafe. It's unsafe for youngsters to lift weights," and that it's not. Do you know what I mean? It's not. If you're shown safely how to do it,
yeah.
Do you know what I mean? As long as you're being guided by somebody that's qualified and supervised by somebody that's qualified to lift properly, then it's a great thing. Do you know what I mean? For youngsters to get into. Do you know what I mean?
Well, it's definitely not the worst thing. Do you know what I mean?
Aye.
I think it teaches you a lot about discipline and work ethic, which is a big part of what sets you up for life in general, not just sport.
Exactly. You get things like boxing and stuff like that. I done a wee bit of boxing training when I was younger, and things like that are massive. Do you know what I mean? For teaching you, good life skills and stuff like that as well. Do you know what I mean? It sets you up for life, with work ethic and things like that as well, and being disciplined and all the rest of it. So, no, but I think with Strongman as well, when you're talking about it, you're talking about the set ways. There's no set way to do anything in Strongman. Do you know what I mean? There's a kind of recommended way, and there's a way that a lot of people do it, but a lot of the events, you're just basically working it out as you go. Do you know what I mean? Like some events you've never it was a car roll at UK's Strongest Man. You know what I mean? It's not something that I do very often. Do you know what I mean? I don't tend to go and roll cars too much, so things like that you just kind of figure out on the spot. Do you know what I mean? And you adapt mid-event, mid-competition, and you work out ways to do it, pick up tips for other people and watch how other people's doing it, and
these aren't
it's all about adapting,
They're not your general day-to-day things, are they?
It's no kind of things you can just go out into the gym and pick up,
But see, like, doing all these challenges, like, what one have you found particularly the hardest in your experience?
Well, from a personal point of view, my overhead press was always my weakest event. That's something that I really struggled with to find good progression in. Things like deadlift and stuff came quite naturally to me. But over the last couple of years, it's something I've been working really hard on, and it's been progressing really well. So it's good. It's a good feeling to see something that you've been putting the graft in starting to come to fruition, in competitions, and instead of bombing out and getting no reps and no points in that event, you're mixing it up, do you know what I mean, and getting points. So I think that was a massive difference, for previous years. I wasn't playing catch up. We're losing so many points in one event. I've been more consistent through all the events, So
because people might think that you just have to have one really good event, but the more you go into it, you realise that actually consistently getting points is key to doing well in it.
Definitely, because I don't have really one event where I can say I'm head and shoulders above MD. I'm just average. Do you know what I mean on everything?
Aye.
So,
but average consistency is how you build things up as well.
Well, that's it. Aye. Instead of being up and down with scoring points and stuff, I'm kind of consistent, and I just need to get that final wee push to improve the certain things, and it'll be consistent plus a couple of event wins and stuff, and then that could be the difference. You know what I mean?
Do you think what would happen now if you box now? Would you just be gassed out?
That'd be terrible. I don't think I'd be able to hold my hands up to my face any longer than about 30 seconds, you know, without the lactic acid and stuff. So it would be horrendous.
Is there any cardio in it at all?
It's conditioning as opposed to cardio.
Yeah.
We're picking things up like 140 kilo sandbags, 300 kilo frames and stuff.
I'm thinking about it, man.
And literally running maybe 10, 20 metres. So in Strongman, you'll get events that last 60 or 75 seconds. So it's about putting that hard work in a short space of time, if that makes sense. So it's more like going absolutely balls out for 60 seconds, 75 seconds, and then resting. Do you know what I mean? It's no about more being cardio for a longer period of time, if that makes sense.
Well, you're training for what you're having to, like that, it's the explosiveness of it, I guess.
Aye, it's just wee short bursts going absolutely flat out, and then you're maybe waiting an hour before you do your next event and competitions,
What's the longevity like in terms of, is there a point where you're like, right, I need to kind of wind down from this?
Well, I think a lot of it to do is how you approach it. If you're smart with your training, smart with your rehab, smart with all your supplements, and just looking after your body, then you can go on as long as you want to. Do you know what I mean? Obviously, we're working full time and training really hard. I'm starting to feel, the aches and pains and whatever, but it's all about trying to minimise that, keeping top of my mobility, my rehab work, getting physio regularly, and as long as you maintain things, I think there's a lot more awareness and a lot more, out there to educate people on how to warm up properly and, how to look after yourself a lot more. Whereas back in the days, it was just
lift heavy.
You literally just walk in and lift heavy and then go away again, and that's it. So I think that's developing along with the sport. As the sport develops, the rehab, the recovery, and everything else is just, following.
And that's probably a big reason why you're seeing the quality of it step up and more people are watching it, because it's more, designed to be for peak performance.
100%. Folk are doing separate, different things to get that extra 5%. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's how close it is now. Do you know what I mean? You're seeing so many competitions that are literally separated by fractions of a second, or 1 point here, 2 points there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas back in the day, you'd maybe get one guy that would run away with it with like 10 points and stuff like that. And now it's just so close, because everybody's up in their game.
Well, because we were talking about before we started, the Luke was second in the event that Tom was in
the final event,
going into it, and it ends up finishing 7th, just because it's so close together.
Well, it was massively close, and it just shows you one wee small mistake can cost you massive, because that was like me at UK's. I was basically, if I won the last event, I would have finished in 3rd place, right? I finished 2nd in the last event. One guy beat me by a matter of seconds, and instead of finishing 3rd, I finished 5th. Do you know what I mean? So, and then when I finished 5th, there was still only 1.5 points that separated 5th place and 2nd place. So that's how tight it was. Do you know what I mean? It literally came down to seconds in the final event for being podium. Do you know what I mean? So when you say to somebody, I came 5th, it doesn't sound, they think, 5th. Do you know what I mean? That's at mid-table. Do you know what I mean? But then it's 5th, but 1.5 points away for 2nd. You don't appreciate how actually close it was. You know what I mean? It's all fine margins.
It's just such a fierce competitive environment. Like,
it
must be as well. Like, see, when you realise you've missed out just by that short distance, it must make you train harder as well. When you go back, you're like that.
It did. I was gutted at first. I'm not going to lie. I was absolutely gutted. It's not that, but see 2 weeks before when I get the wildcard spot, right? See, if somebody had said to me, "You'll finish 5th in the final," I would have been absolutely over the moon. Do you know what I mean? I'd have bit the hand off them for it. But see, to be that close to the podium and miss out, it'd have been easier to take if I was maybe 5 points behind or something, I was miles away.
Yeah.
But see, for it literally to come down to the last event and just be seconds away, it was pretty hard to take. But once the disappointment kind of settled down, I thought to myself, you know what, I've mixed it with the best, do you know what I mean? And I'm no far away, do you know what I mean? So I know now what I need to go and do, what I need to work on.
You know that you're there, like you're in about it, and you just get a couple of, but like, see what you were talking about earlier, how going into the event you did recently, there was less pressure because you had less time to almost think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that like sports psychology and things like that could come into it in a more heavy role? Is that present now, or is that a new thing?
It's something I've personally never tried, but I know we're talking to people that look and stuff like that, they've been using sports psychologists and things like that, and it's maybe the one piece of the puzzle that I've not tried yet. So maybe something I might.
Well, it's just because when it is that close, you know, that you looking at all these different areas, especially now when I look at, for example, I'm taking this for Paul's podcast, but the guy Paul Craig in UFC, a lot of his, you know, he was on like a kind of losing streak for a while, and now he's on fire. But a lot of the difference was he apparently got in like a sports psychologist and all these things, and so when you hear you talking about the fine margins of this, you start going, maybe things like that are what just kind of make the small differences.
I think it would really help, I think, when you're in preparation and you're in the build up to a competition, and maybe you're having, as we're talking about, you're having the bad days, you're having the bad weeks, things aren't feeling right. It would be good to speak to somebody and just, you know, get that mindset changed and, you know, focus.
Well, there's a thought for any strongman, including yourself, we'll get a sports psychologist, maybe.
Yeah, sports psychologist. There's
me talking as if I know exactly what I'm talking about here. Like
it makes a lot of sense, mate, and that could be as you said, everybody's trying everything. They're getting to get that extra wee 5% or 3% better, you know what I mean, in nutrition, recovery. So maybe, you know, obviously the mind's a massive part, do you know what I mean? So that's a great point, do you know what I mean? That's definitely something to look into.
And see, talking about all this stuff about how it's improved in terms of mobility and things like that, like thinking about young people coming into this, would that be the best advice to give them, is to look at every area of it, not just the part of going in and lifting heavy?
100%, yeah. It would be the full setup. It would be how you start your workout, how you prepare for your workout, how you warm up, do you know what I mean? And then obviously the stretching and stuff at the end to keep yourself mobile, you know, and allow your body to recover and for the next session. So I think obviously with the more education that's out there now and available, it's definitely something that must be, you know what I mean, just bread and butter. But it's not like the old gym bro days. I remember some of the older guys in the gym that I used to look up to, and it used to be just like, right, bang 20s on a side every set, right, that's till you get to your working set, and that was you warmed up, do you know what I mean? There was no warm up, there was no stretching, no foam rolling, you know what I mean, there was nothing. So
body must be like a stiff as a board, man.
Aye, it's the knees that's starting to kill me, mate. But as I say, it's when I go and see my physio, or if I've been neglecting it, do you know what I mean? Because I start to get aches and pains and stuff, you know what I mean? But if I keep on top of it, it's night and day how better it feels, you know. So it's just trying to keep.
So how much time in your like workouts and stuff is spent on that side of things?
Well, I'll probably be about half an hour at the start of my workout doing my kind of warm up routine. Do you know what I mean? My mobility stuff like that, and then also like I go through a wee routine where I just do whatever muscles I'll be training that day. You try and get them firing, so to speak. Try and get them engaged and things like that. So about half an hour. And then I'll be about 2 hours actually doing my workout, if you know what I mean. So you're probably about 2.5 hours. Because
I think a lot of people, when they hear warm-up, they think a couple of stretches, 5 minutes, good to go. That's it, let's get going.
On the treadmill or on the rowing machine or something for 5 minutes, you know, and that's it. But it's definitely not, do you know what I mean? It's obviously, there's so much that goes into your warm-ups and things like that, you know, and it's obviously different for what other people, you know what I mean? I wouldn't warm up the same way as like a bodybuilder or a power lifter or an Olympic lifter would warm up, you know. So it's just about learning, having a wee bit of knowledge and kind of, you know, adapting it to your sport, you know. So
looking at how this is going, like I've loved talking about all these things, but what is your main goal now in your head?
Well, when I started Strongman, my goal was to get to UK's Strongest Man, not even get to the final, just to be there. Do you know what I mean? I used to watch it in Channel 5 and think, right, that's my world's strongest man, if that makes sense. That'll be if I can appear on that, you know what I mean, get on the telly, like get my mum, my gran and that to see me on the telly, that'll be me happy. Do you know what I mean? But now that I've done that, and I've done that like 3 years ago, you know, your goals change a wee bit, you know what I mean? And you shift up and you go, look, well, I've made it there. Let's try and do a wee bit better. So then obviously now I've been fifth. So short term, I want a podium, you know what I mean, at UK's. That's the kind of short term goal. And then over the next 3 years, try and get up to the kind of world stage, you know, and try and see how I mix it with the big boys, you know what I mean?
Well, sky's the limit, mate.
Well, that's it. That's definitely the way I've been starting to look at things, you know.
The more you realise that you can do it, and the more you can just, you know, that's the key to it.
That's true to say. You only put limitations on yourself, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
So, I look forward to just working hard and just seeing where the next couple of years take me, you know.
Well, listen, this has been a pleasure, and I hope you're watching it for what you do next.
Well, thanks very much for having me. It was an honour to be on.
Anytime, and I appreciate you saying that, mate.
Cheers, man.
Cheers.
Thanks.